Okay, I can see our room is filling nicely and we are just coming up on time. So let us begin. Welcome everyone. My name is Lee Lindsay from Code Institute and I will be your host for what promises to be a fascinating discussion on skills bootcamps with two people who have first-hand experience in delivering them. First, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping for today's session. You'll see in the bottom right that there is a chat function. Please note that that is set to private at the moment, but I would strongly encourage you to share your thoughts and your questions with us. At the end of the discussion, we will have a questions and answers session where we'll run through the questions in detail. We hope to keep today's discussion to around 30 to 40 minutes. I really hope that you enjoy it, and I look forward to your feedback afterwards. So, by way of introduction, for anyone who is uninitiated to what skills bootcamps are, skills bootcamps have become one of the hottest topics in FE today. The UK government has placed significant investment behind them to the tune of around £600 million. That's both directly and also through mayoral combined authorities and also local authorities. They take the form of short, intensive, skills-focused training initiatives of up to 16 weeks in length. The bootcamps are designed to equip learners with skills in sectors that we all know are of critical economic need. Sectors like digital, green skills, construction, health and social care. And the whole idea is to get learners into work at the end of the program. But despite all of the investment, there's been very little uptake from the FE sector, and in particular, colleges. Only 30% of FE colleges are currently delivering skills bootcamps. And quite recently, the FE Commissioner, Sheila LeGrave, actually issued a rallying cry and set some very ambitious targets, asking colleges to amplify their provision to the tune of around 25%. Today, we're going to talk through some of the barriers to uptake and talk about why colleges haven't participated thus far. And towards that end, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by two trailblazers in this area and also two people that I also know very, very well. It delights me to introduce Alison Mugridge from Westminster Adult Education Service and Pascal Fasulo from City of Bristol College. Welcome, guys. Alison.
Hi.
Would you mind giving us a short introduction to yourself and to Westminster Adult Education Service?
Yes, certainly. My name's Alison Mugridge, as you've said. I'm the assistant principal here at Westminster Adult Education. So I look after all of the delivery lines in total. I've been with the service for 5 years now, and we started our bootcamp journey 2 years ago. I mean, we operate in a number of different funding fields. So we're funded through the Mayor's Combined Authority of London. We have an adult education grant, a national grant. We have an apprenticeship arm. So we have a lot of different arms, and bootcamps was a further funding arm for us to look into and obtain.
Okay, fantastic. And Pascal, perhaps just some context for City of Bristol College and your role within the organisation.
Yeah, so thank you, Lisa. I'm Pascal Fasulo. I'm the Director of Further and Higher Education here at City of Bristol College. We are a big general further education college here in the City of Bristol. We have a majority of our students are from the 16 to 18 and the adult, but we also run a number of apprenticeships, and we have some higher education and commercial provision. The majority of our students do come into the adult sector, and we are funded by the West of England Combined Authority devolved education budget, but we also get some direct from the DFE as well. So yeah, that's us.
Super. Look, thank you both, and look, thank you again for joining today to, I suppose, share the things that you've learned and the experiences that you've both had during your engagement with skills bootcamps. Just at this point, before we dive into questions, I just want to remind everyone that the chat function is there. Please do share your thoughts and feedback, and myself and the panel, we will discuss the common questions at the end of the session. But we can dive right in. So Alison, can you tell us a little bit more about the types of bootcamp programs that you're running with Westminster Adult Education Service?
Yes, certainly. So 2 years ago, we started our journey, as I said, and we started first of all with the Amazon Restart program. It was a good opportunity for us to dip our toes into the water and test how well they went. And the Restart program is in cloud computing. So at the end of the 12 weeks, they actually get a certification. They take an exam. There's a certification which allows them access into the digital sector. We were quite surprised at how quickly the bootcamp started to become popular in terms of a good way for adults to upskill rapidly, intensely and quickly and get involved. So we run about 2 to 3 of those. And then in the second wave of funding, or I think it's actually wave 4 funding, we therefore wanted to increase our outreach and look at other programs in the digital sector. And at that point, that's when we went into the full stack development, and we approached yourselves, the Code Institute, to look at the curriculum aspect for us, so that we could focus on the delivery side and actually delivering it, but someone actually that's got those links with industry to look at the technical content to make sure it was absolutely what was needed for industry. So we started those last November, and we're looking at just finishing our second cohort full stack and starting our third full stack bootcamp in, going to say, the end of February.
Okay. And if you think it back to the very beginning, what was the, like, so with Amazon Restart, and also with the, I suppose, even thinking forward to the second the full stack initiatives that you've collaborated with us on, with bootcamps just as a training mechanism, what was it that prompted you to think about engaging with them as a delivery mechanism or as a training model?
I think it was twofold. For us, 2 years ago, we were still just coming out of the COVID recovery. A lot of people had been displaced from redundancies or change of heart in terms of what they wanted to do. So there was a lot of people at that point wanting to reskill and retrain quickly, but actually had what I call the fundamental skills of being able to access work underneath them. So they didn't need to talk about attendance and employability and CVs. They just needed the technical skills. And they could have joined a program and done a level 3 or a level 5 and 1 day a week over a year. But actually they wanted to do something more intense with us. And we actually quite often got asked, do you do anything with 2 or 3 days a week? And we hadn't at that point. So when the opportunity came up, when Amazon approached us, we thought, actually, this is a really good idea. And like I said, that because they came with the curriculum content, it just meant we had to focus on getting somebody skilled up and ready for delivery, rather than, right, we're going to invent a boot camp from scratch. We've got to get all the content there, which, 12 weeks, 5 days a week is a lot of content. And that's what, for us, I think we decided to do it. And obviously the added advantage, it's another revenue stream. So that it's not to be said that this isn't just part of our AEB budget. This is actually technically growth in funding.
Mm. And Pascal, I suppose, I know that the journey at City of Bristol is a little more recent, but perhaps can you give me some background as to how you and the college, I suppose maybe you could talk a little bit about the different types of bootcamp provision. I know that with digital, your engagement has been somewhat recent, but if you speak more broadly, perhaps that would be useful.
Yeah, so we, through our subsidiary organisation, Partners in Bristol, have been doing bootcamps for a while now through the previous waves. These have been mainly within leadership and management and within the logistics sector for supporting for the HGV and LGV driver shortage. So the model within this format works as a subsidiary company. Partners in Bristol do a lot more employer focused work and through other funding streams other than just boot camps. But boot camps have been on the agenda for a while. So from my own personal perspective, they had been something I was always intrigued with, but with the sectors that were priority areas, digital was one that was always going to be potentially a challenge given the nature of the industry the number of employers that you need to have involved. And for us in the west of England, we have a lot of small, medium enterprise organisations that are somewhat limited in terms of the capacity that they can give up to support with certain provision type. So we've been working with Code Institute since late 2021, October 2021, where we've been running the level 5 web development. So this was a natural kind of evolution really from that, to look at how could we take that model of what we're doing with those students and do it in a more intense, shorter time period in the boot camp. And it addressed really a skills need that we have in the west of England for developers, and particularly for a full stack. And it's very new provision to us in terms of the main kind of arm of the college. So it was an opportunity to work with the network that Code Institute has in terms of the employers, and develop that link we've already got in a more strategic way and explore that. So we had a first boot camp start just before Christmas as part of the extended wave 4, the additional wave 4A as it was referred to. And although it was only a small number of students because of the funding that was there, we're pleased that we can explore, pleased to get it up running, because it gives us some ground, and we're in a position hopefully where we will be able to continue that bootcamp model with the extension that's coming out further, and then into wave 5.
Fantastic. You both touched upon, I think, well, there was 3 things, like Alison, you mentioned just a couple of challenges when you talked about, I suppose, the attitudinal things of learners coming on, like getting the right learners on program, challenges around content for bootcamp delivery, and then Pascal, you mentioned the employers. I think we might come back to just some of those ideas shortly. But if we just, again, from a high level perspective, Alison, if I could just get your view on, so as a training model, why do you think boot camps are effective? And I know, and we'll talk about your results, I know you've seen employment results. Why do you think they land the results?
Fundamentally, it's a sharp, quick, intense way of developing people's skills. So, and I mentioned this earlier, they could come on a very similar program and do 1 day a week over a year, but it's a long and slow, gradual process. Whereas every day, 5 days a week, intensely getting involved, the skill level is quicker to come to fruition. So where people come on the course and they're like, I'm never going to be able to finish and get all of these skills in 12 weeks. And in the first week, we get a lot of discussions about what training can we do after this and what training might come next. We sort of say, just get through the program, and then we can talk about what other training you might need. By the time they get to week 9 or 10, they're far more confident in what skills they have gained. When they're looking for jobs, they understand the language they're looking for. They can see, oh, yes, I've got what they're asking for. Whereas right at the beginning, they don't know. So the whole program, being immersed in it, and we do it with employability embedded throughout the whole program, enables them quickly to get the skills they need to be able to go in and talk effectively with employers. I think when we do them longer and slowly, it's a more gradual process, and therefore it takes longer. And some of these people don't want to wait. They want to get it quickly and get into work.
And Pascal, I might ask you the same question. Thanks for that, Alison.
Yeah, so I think pretty similar to what Alison just said. I think, most adult programs that are funded tend to use the old a qualification model. So you take the qualification off the shelf, you can deliver it in as many different ways as you kind of want. But ultimately the goal there is get the qualification. The funding model is set up in a way that you are paid installments throughout the time the student's retained, and then you get that extra at the end when they achieve. So the whole shift is towards actually, employment. And some people come on to do qualifications that are quite old, quite dated, that are still available for funding. and may not necessarily be the right thing for them. So this is a way, you know, of opening up a degree of flexibility, really, because the great thing about the bootcamp model is you do not have to use something that's regulated. You can design something completely of your own accord, as long as you can demonstrate the skills that are being requested. So that's why the employers, you know, it's really important to have the employers not only at the end of it, where, you know, you need to get the student an interview for your second funding payment, and then ultimately the success criteria is a percentage of them going into work, but you need them at the start to help shape what is your plan. And although you can use, you know, people do use little, maybe small qualifications that are built into the bootcamp program. For example, you know, in construction, getting a CSCS card might be really critical. It could be that there's a very minor cybersecurity kind of based thing that we do in digital as well, just to kind of give some credentials. But at the same time, they're not the be all and end all. They are primarily taking on what the employers are saying. So you need these skills, these technical abilities. You need to understand how to do this. And be able to apply it in a way. So that's how you design the boot camp, very much with the employers saying this is what you need. And you know, from the off, then the student knows that it isn't just an off-the-shelf kind of qualification that we've designed something to fit into. It's bespoke to that route. You've got a lot more targeted kind of, this is where I can take jobs into. And I even think with ours, you know, as a full stack developer, that is still generally quite broad, because that can open up avenues into all sorts of areas of tech, but fundamentally is built around the core principles of being able to undertake software development skills. But we know that the things that are being taught on it are what being advertised for in vacancies and in person specs and in job descriptions. So that's our sell, really, to those people to come on and do it.
Great, thanks for that, Pascal. Getting a small little bit of just interference. I don't know if it's your own connection. I was going to just ask you a little bit about the City of Bristol and the employer network. I can see some questions are coming in on the employer engagement, but I might just switch that to Alison. Hopefully the gremlins in the connection will go away momentarily. So Alison, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Westminster Adult Education Service, just in respect of the employer engagement piece, because it's such a critical and fundamental aspect to the whole bootcamp initiative.
Absolutely. I mean, and actually we've learned as we've gone along. So every time we run a bootcamp, you learn about, oh, that really worked well, we should do that again, etc. So, but what we fundamentally started with was we needed to get the learners to understand this was about a job at the end of it, and not a training course to do another training course to do potentially more training courses or something different. So right from the offset, from the careers information, advice and guidance, day one induction, we talk about employers, we talk about jobs, we talk about outcomes of the program as a key element, and then embed employability throughout the course. So we've been quite fortunate. We are part of the local authority as an education service. So we've been able to harness some of those larger local contractors that work with the council to bring them in to talk to learners about digital jobs they have on offer, how they interview, expectations from the programme, you know, telling people actually what you're learning is what I need. So building confidence in people so that the learners, not only while they're developing the hard skills, are understanding the route to employment throughout. We get them applying for jobs ASAP. Before, we don't wait till week 12. We wait probably halfway through. They've got their CVs ready. They're adding the skills to the CV as they go along, and we actively get them applying for jobs. One of the more recent things we've done is actually got 2 jobs, live jobs, and said apply for one. Because we were finding some people were a bit reluctant to push send on the CV, and I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but they were a little bit reluctant to apply. I don't know if it was a bit scared, a bit worried, you know, and we just said, what's the worst thing that can happen? Nothing, you know, have a go. And actually one person had a feedback saying, yes, we'd like to invite you for interview. So that soon rippled out in the group that, oh, it works.
Yeah.
It's just getting those quick wins in so that the confidence in the learners going for interview, because I think that's one of the almost the bigger barrier than the technical skills for some of them. They feel confident in the interview and feel confident they do have the skills for jobs. So we've built that network of employers, and obviously every boot camp that goes on, we bring in more employers. We do have an employer relationship manager who, you know, has been tasked with going out there and bringing people in. We work with a recruitment agency, so we've tried to build the portfolio of roles wider and wider each time, and we're in a very fortunate position now, 2 years down, that we're getting people coming back saying, have you got someone else? So, because it has been successful, so that whole ripple effect starts to take in. So, you know, we had this learner, and I mentioned this to somebody, that we've also got a strong alumni. So the alumni can now come in and say, you know, a year ago, I sat where you were thinking, I'm never going to do this. I'm now on 40K a year, got a career path ahead of me. I can see my next job's around the corner. Keep on and you can get it too. And again, that builds that employer link, but also the confidence in the learners.
Yeah, and we might touch on some of those success stories shortly. Pascal, we'll try you again on, I suppose you touched on some of the challenges that you may have in Bristol with employers that Alison may have a completely different experience of, being in the heart of London. But how does City of Bristol College, manage the employer engagement piece?
Well, I suppose we do have a smaller cohort, and you know, we've started off a bit. We had some good links with employers already that we were able to build upon and get their support for running the boot camp. Our employer engagement is very broad through a wider business development team, which is also securing employers for potential apprenticeships, commercial, as well as our T-levels that we will be running for industry placement. So every opportunity we can take to engage with an employer, we will. I think our process has really been turning onto, if you know you can't engage with us in this format, what's the best way of engaging with us? So we need to try and make it as work around them, but also we need to be firm with that. If you don't start engaging, if some employers continue, which unfortunately in some sectors it is very difficult because of the nature of the industry. As I already referenced, in Bristol, we maybe don't have as many as the big kind of companies. It's more small medium enterprises who are working project to project and, you know, struggling to find the time to do that, but then need the people. So it's a case of, well, if you don't start helping us, we can't feed that pipeline of people coming in that are going to build your business and help grow the work you've got. So that's been very helpful as a way of going, I'll take 5 minutes now to hopefully save an hour later kind of approach. So as I said, we're hoping to do another one in the next wave. So at the moment we're out there trying to get more employers on board, because you know the employers we've worked with so far, they're not going to have an abundance of jobs just in their own individual industries. So we'll go to we will open up networking and forum events for those employers to attend and listen to them. I think that's the key thing, is listen to the employers. We don't want to teach them to suck eggs, but also at the same time we need to be clear about what we need as well. So we negotiate and we work together.
Yeah, look, you've touched on something. I have direct experience, so through employer engagement, and I know from our own organization, it's something that we do extensively. Sometimes it involves extensive dialogue with the employer to actually get to the specific skills that they want, because sometimes they have a general idea. They might need developers. You talked about full stack developers, but it being quite broad. Like in terms of specific skills, sometimes you really need to have an open and in-depth dialogue with the employer to work out exactly what it is. Like, you know, what is the profile of person that you want, and then what are the hard skills that you want accompanying that person. That's the employer piece is one of the challenges that is cited But if we're thinking about the lack of uptake that's being referred to just from the FE sector in general, Pascal, I might stick with you for this for a moment. Can you perhaps maybe share your views as to, you know, perhaps the perceived barriers to entry for other providers and colleges when it comes to bootcamp delivery?
I think it's mainly it might be to do with the way the funding is distributed. It's and also the cycle. Really, bootcamps tend to work in the way the funding is allocated through financial, you know, your sort of traditional financial year, you know, April to March kind of thing. Whereas obviously the sector is very much operating on an academic calendar, September through to August, and you can often have that as a you know, if your core model of delivery is based on that, which, you know, as a college ours is, you know, with over 3,000 school leavers coming in, and, you know, the majority of our income coming in from that way, we're very much geared up to that, and then some of our adult follow suit. So, you know, that's one thing that I think might be in other colleges. There is also the way then the metrics of or the milestones that have got to be met for the funding. 40% is paid after the first 5 days. You then have another 30% that is given at the end of the course and the offer of an interview, and then you've got the rest of it to when they get employed. So that then there's obviously a target of how many of them have to go into a job within a period normally of around about 6 months after the end of the boot camp. I think if people look at the funding model against the way that the adult is currently delivered, you know, a qualification off the shelf model, it's not too dissimilar in that about 20% of it is held back on the achievement. So you need to look at that risk of how many can we actually get versus, you know, what we can cost it at. But then also you need to think about, do we have the employer network there too? And, you know, boot camps generally are in areas where there are in short demand. There is a high demand and short supply of people skilled in those areas. So by virtue, you're going to end up with less people in colleges that have got those skills to teach it as well. So that's another issue. One of the things that we're looking at is to grow our own from one of our own courses that we've done with Code Institute. We've recruited an instructor who's come on full time as a teacher with us, and you know, there's opportunities within that as well to kind of build up. So the challenges within the sector, I think, do differ, but the majority of around is it's a very new model that has these maybe new interesting and points of anxiety maybe for people considering it. But, you know, start small and dip your toe in the water. You might find that actually there's some really good opportunities that come from it. It's about building up. I mean, I can't speak for that. We're very early in our journey on this, but you know, other providers like Alison and Westminster have been doing this for a while, and they're doing very well with it. So we look to those places as inspiration to kind of go, yeah, let's go and give it a try.
And look, like Pascal, thanks for that. In fact, I like the way that you really contextualized it there. That it's not a million miles away from all like models that have been in existence for a very long time. Alison, if you're thinking about some of the challenges that Pascal has touched upon in terms of the staffing and the payment models, like, what have you guys done in City of Bristol College? Do you agree with those challenges? Is there anything you'd add, and maybe some context for how you manage them? Because you've delivered a variety of boot camps, and you've been doing it successfully and very well for a while.
Yeah, I think the staffing was one we had to consider, because traditionally in the FE skills sector, you know, people have contracted hours per week they can teach, and sometimes it can be a highly unionized area where people, you know, will not teach above their contracted annual weekly hours. But we're not that unionized, which is quite good. So there wasn't lots of negotiation needed there. But actually, when we did talk to people, it was about, would you like this as an opportunity? It's a very different approach. It's a very different way of doing things. And actually, we were quite fortunate. We had somebody come forward and said, actually, I really like this as a model, and they feel they can get really involved with the learners and support the learners, rather than, right, I've got this group on a Monday, this group on a Tuesday, this group on a Wednesday, and before you know it, they've got 100 learners and they barely know everybody's name. So, you know, it was one way of them being able to really get to know their learners well. And actually, some of the feedback I've had from the staff teaching it is it's so rewarding when they come and say, I've got the job, I've got it. They, you know, people are through the moon about things, you know, and I think they got that sense of reward, that immediate reward from a program, rather than, oh, I've done this qualification and thank you for teaching me. So we've been very fortunate, very similar to Pascal. We're looking at some of the current students. We approach them and say, look, would you like an opportunity here? Wrap a package up for them. We've had someone potentially say yes. We're just talking to them now about, you know, how we can support them with teacher training so that they can deliver high quality lessons, not just the technical knowledge. So I think there are ways of doing it. And it's just that the one thing I will say with boot camps, it has to be thought about differently. You can't go in this going, right, I've got another course to add to my portfolio. Otherwise, the whole funding model doesn't work. You know, we have a job coach that sits with the team, and right from day one, they are making appointments with individuals. They're getting them to apply for jobs. They're coaching them through interview technique. So it's a sort of an integral part for us. Otherwise, if we waited to the end of the boot camp and said, right, how are you going to get a job? We wouldn't have the outcomes we've had. So, you know, I think that's the other side I'd say is you do need to think about how you're going to deliver this slightly differently than what I call standard qualifications in FE.
Gotcha. You mentioned the outcomes. Like, what are the outcomes that you've achieved so far?
We're about at 40%. I know the DFE wants 75%. You know, I'm not going to comment on that as an outcome desire. I think 40% going into, and I call it good, well, London, it's called good work. All of them are earning above 25,000. We've got people in 40,000, 60,000, and we've even had people get a year contract on 100,000. So they are going into good job outcomes at the end of that program. Interestingly, we've had very few people go into the apprenticeships, even though we've promoted it and we've said, you know, it's still a good position in terms of continuing your learning. More people have secured permanent employment than they have apprenticeships. The vast majority more. I think we've only had 2 people actually go into apprenticeships.
And like, I suppose, Pascal, from your perspective, I know it's early days, and from an outcomes perspective, it's probably too early to account for that. But do you have a vision, or have you set internal KPIs for, you know, where you would like to bring the project to?
Well, because we have such a small cohort in our very first one, I mean, our aspiration is that they would all achieve go on into employment, and you know, we feel that with the caliber of the candidates who came on in their previous in previous education, etc., that you know, that they do stand a very good chance of seeking and sustaining employment. So you know, there is that, as Alison said, there is a kind of a DFE set performance measure of you know, 75% nationally, because we operate in a combined authority. There's an adjustment to that, so we've got an 80% in the west of England. I mean, that's, don't quote me on that, I can't clarify, but that's what we're looking at as our sort of targets with those kind of things. However, you know, the aim really for us is to, you know, this is very much a kind of a pilot boot camp for us, in the sense of, you know, we will learn things from it, and we will reflect on some of the pinch points, or maybe some of the things that went on in that, and we will very much get that feedback from that very first cohort of students as we go through, which we are doing, because that's another beauty of it, because the nature of the boot camp isn't you're fixed with this qualification. You may be able to, you can be agile and make some changes, minor changes, albeit to that in consultation with the provider, with the combined authority in our case. We haven't had to do that yet, but on a major scale, we've only just responded to the feedback from the students and used the support from the tutors delivering to support them on the online, the self-directed study elements of the course as well. We are, as Alison said, really trying to hammer in the fact that this isn't about a course to lead you onto another course. It's about getting a job. That was very clear in the IAG. That was very clear in that onboarding process, and still very much being explicit about that going through. And although we are only within the first sort of 6 weeks, 7 weeks of the delivery of this, we're at the halfway point where we are now saying, right, we need to start getting you being brave and applying for jobs. And what is the worst thing that can happen? No response, no reply, you move on. And you will make mistakes and learn from them. So that's the key thing. All we can do is work to support every single one of those students, albeit on a small group, and give them the opportunity they can, to feedback to us and use that feedback in shaping how we can go forward with this, not only with the rest of this cohort, but also in future cohorts.
That's something that I've seen just threaded through the responses. You use the words there, the caliber of the candidate. And when we're talking about the boot camps, and I know the delivery contexts, it's an unemployed learner audience. And Alison, you've said that it's different from normal programs. And perhaps Alison, I'll go back to you. When Pascal talks about the caliber of the candidate, how do you like it? Because, and again, it's linked to the payment model because it's outcomes based. The candidates need to be on the program, they need to complete the program, and then you need that progression. So how do you deal with that caliber of the candidate? How do you get the right people onto your programs?
I mean, apart from some aptitude testing, which we do at all points in terms of initial assessment, there is quite a strong emphasis in the I suppose the initial advice and guidance interview. So again, we've tweaked that as we've gone along. We place a huge amount of detail in the support around them, how they're going to cope with 12 days, 12 weeks, 5 days a week, 9 to 5. What things have they got in their life that might need to move? So we really help them in those early sort of, even before they've even come on program, think through, is this for you? I mean, we have had single parents do the program very, very successfully. And I think that's because we've put up what do you need right up front for them. And they've talked about, well, I've got a child in school, but I'm thinking 2 days a week, I haven't got any support. So we've been able to provide childcare, etc. So I think a really strong emphasis on upfront discussions about what are the barriers. And actually, there have been people where we said, this is not for you. If you're going through medical appointments regularly, and I know you want to aspire to do this, you need to get them out of the way. You're not going to cope if every Friday morning you're down the doctors because you're on a long-term sort of support package. And other people have said, actually, I don't think 3 young children, someone said, actually, I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do. I just wanted to do the program. So we could have just interviewed them and said, yeah, great candidate. So really the credentials to come on the course are the easy bit. It's for me making sure they're really aware of what 12 days, 9 to 5 feels like, and trying to get them to really understand the commitment levels they need. And there will always be the odd one that wobbles around, but actually in the main, that has helped us to be more successful in getting people through the whole program. Super.
I'm conscious a little of time, and there was a question that I'd love to just ask you both. Just when we touched on challenges, and I know you both deal with devolved authorities, but if it was the DFE or if it was your local authority and you could wave a magic wand or you could get them to just tweak something about the model, and I know you both engage with it, you see the value of it, you could see it working, but if there was any adjustment, what adjustment would you make? And perhaps Pascal, if you could answer that first.
Oh, that's a bit of a tricky question.
I'm happy to go first while you have a think, because I've got one that I'm currently lobbying with.
Oh, fantastic. Go ahead, Alison.
So we're actually working with the GLA at the moment. One thing we have noticed, because we've been doing them a long while, is adult lives aren't quite as linear as young people's. So, you know, 16 to 18 year olds, you're usually trying to get them, you know, do a 2-year program onto university, etc. And for the majority of those learners, that's how it works. With adults, you know, they're coming into this, they've got busy lives, is the only way I can explain it. And things happen. So it's not when they finish the course, they might then have to have a couple of months out because something's happened, or they're moving, or just some things go on in people's lives, and it takes longer than 6 months to get the job. So the guidelines currently is within 6 months, of completing the course, you need to be in employment. We've got higher outcomes than 40%, but I can't record them because people still stay in touch with us. So we've got people from 2 years ago that are now telling us from their very first course, they've now managed to secure employment. They did do a couple of extra training courses because they thought it would be valuable, and now they're in work. And that's because we've got a good alumni connectivity going on. So for me, I appreciate the DFE do need a cut-off point, but I think it needs to be longer than 6 months. I think they should wait a year so that people, you know, that need to take a bit longer. And, you know, we've had examples, and I've quoted them elsewhere, where, you know, people have had 100 applications, 30 interviews, and we've built that resilience where they keep going, and then they've got their dream job. But that happened, you know, outside of the 6 months. So it's a negative outcome. So I can't claim the funding. The DFE don't know that job outcome exists. That person's happy as Larry. So I do think there needs to be some consideration for extending the interview, the job outcome. I know that might have a financial nightmare for the DFE, but I'm thinking in true terms of the DFE being able to actually accurately record the outcomes of the boot camps, the success,
and the impact of the training. And look, we'll cut to some of the questions that have come in. But Pascal, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was my one big reservation is I know how quickly or how long it can take for some people, and I think in some industry areas there might be even more things that you might might have to consider. But you know, for us, really, we're very early, as I said, into ours, and our I like elements of flexibility. If I can, we can bring those in, and I think that's not always the case. If you can demonstrate that there's still method, even though they've completed and they haven't gone into employment, there's still some sustainability to what they're doing, and that I think that should be seen as a positive, because it's not, some areas of the boot camp are very quick to get in, and we're talking about a difficult industry to sometimes stay in as well. So we need to, you can get the quick win of someone's employed within 6 months, but then they might only last a month, whereas so I think you've got to square it with how long do we take them to get into, and where are they in a few years' time, because you can accelerate very quickly in this industry, with the right mindset and also with the right employer.
Yeah, like we've spoken about a lot of the challenges. I think that they're readily acknowledged by the DFE, and I think there might even be a pilot initiative going on at the moment to try and address some of those issues. But let's look at some of the questions. So we have one here from Satnam. So thinking about the employer engagement aspect of boot camps, does that feed into any other areas of your provision, like the apprenticeships or T-levels or swaps or anything like that? I suppose, like Pascal, I see you nodding. Maybe I'll let you take it.
Yeah. I mean, when you go out with, whether it's a business development arm or whatever it's called within different providers, they go out to effectively talk about everything that we do. So, and it might be that they come back with, oh, we talked about so and so about these things, but actually they're more interested in this, so we can be responsive to what the employers are saying. So the more information you can provide to your business development arm of your organization, the better, because one thing might be very small, but it can snowball quite quickly, and you never know what you might get from it. So yeah, we've created like little kind of snapshot things to provide to people when they go out, that they can leave and signpost them to things if they want to find out more, just through a conversation at a networking event. So yeah.
All right, thanks, Pascal. Alison, anything to add on that question?
No, I think it's been covered. I think it is about people that are out there knowing what you do and being able to talk, because we work with organisations, and once you talk to that organisation, they have a good experience, they're likely to come to you and say, could you do this, by the way? And we're clear where we don't, and it's like, no, we're not in that area, but we'll refer. But I think it is about trying to have a holistic approach to training for the organisation, not just this is what we do for you and nothing else.
Question in from Sharon, and look, I'm use it. This is somewhat because I know you collaborate with ourselves, but what are the main things you get from a collaborative approach towards bootcamp delivery? And I think it links back into the last question. Alison, I might put that one to yourself.
I mean, I think we're really clear, because it's been so supportive, is making sure that the content that the learners have got is industry driven, technically up to date, so that we can be sure that when they come off these programs, they're absolutely got the right level of skill and the right detail to be able to acquire work. And for us to do that ourselves would accumulate a huge amount of work, not just designing the program, but making sure it's constantly relevant, it's constant up to date, and IT moves as quick as anything at the moment. So that for me is one thing that both of our boot camps have been able to offer us. They get heavily involved in the content and the industry expertise, etc. We then can focus on what we're good at, which is supporting the learners and the delivery to make sure that they're successful.
And thanks so much, Alison. Pascal, anything from yourself towards the, I suppose, the partner-led approach towards delivering boot camps and training initiatives?
Well, I mean, from my own personal experience, it gave me the confidence and just the kind of, I suppose, that feeling of security that I could move forward with this. And the relationship that we've had with Code Institute on the other programs that we deliver has always been very positive, and as a a partner that is listens and is able to kind of collaborate with, and not just kind of like dictate, that has been very important for me. And where there are concerns, we can talk openly about that, and but it's always okay, there's a concern, but it's an opportunity for us to look at something rather than here's a problem, let's try and solve it kind of approach. But yeah, I mean, as it's my first time doing a boot camp, or our first, as a within this sector, we are we were conscious that there was a limitation of how much we could do with the employer network we had, and having Code Institute with the national recognition that they've got, and the the network that they've built as well, was really important, and probably a main driver in us going forward with it.
Super, thanks, Pascal. We will wrap shortly. A question that just goes back to challenges to a degree, and look, I will give this one to Alison, because I suppose longer in the tooth with boot camps, it's to do with the dropouts piece. Like when learners don't make it, like how do you manage those scenarios?
And again, I think this is learning as we've gone through the programs, and usually there's two points. There's the early ones that either turn up for one day and go, or don't show up, and actually there's very little you can do. That happens, and it happens on all of our programs, so we just accept that. But there's usually sort of like a 6-week, 7-week crunch point for some people where it's quite a hard slog. They start to feel the pressure. They're starting to get their portfolios together. They're starting to really get their detailed skills together. Life is going on outside of the college as well. And sometimes it's just having somebody they can talk to about the issues, and to get that thing either from the teacher or our pastoral team, just to reassure them that they're doing well and they're fine and everything's okay. So, you know, rather than the wobble and don't come back because they're worried they're not keeping up, actually someone reassuring them and giving them that time. And we do a lot of work with our teachers on tracking and looking at progress of learners and at-risk learners. Then we get a group of people potentially that have got a crisis happen. You know, they've had a major meltdown, mental health concern, a husband or partner's been taken seriously ill. And actually, there's very little you can do. I mean, sometimes we've been good if it's childcare. We've been able to put extra money for childcare or support in other ways. But if it really is a crisis, you just have to accept that happens, and you just support them and sort of, you know, reassure them that they can join the program again. If they need to take time out, rather than telling them they've been a failure, you've dropped out. So, you know, you've managed to do half the program. You know, in the future, you can rejoin again when it is the right time for you.
Super, thank you, Alison. I'm increasingly conscious of the running time, so I'll pass you both, I suppose, a parting question before we wrap up. And look, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground when it comes to the challenges, the employer engagement piece, the payment models, the staffing, and then other aspects like getting right learners on the program. And then even when learners are in the program, as you've alluded to there, Alison, you know, like some of the problems that may happen around engagement, attrition, second chances, etc. But if Alison, I'll start with you. If you were giving any advice to anyone, like a peer, for instance, in another college, considering, like, what would your advice be in terms of engaging with skills bootcamp delivery, whether it's in digital or any other sector?
I think definitely go for it, and think about it as a different funding model and a different way of delivery that's needed. So I you know, there's very few opportunities that come to us in FE where there's growth. This is an area of growth, so embrace it. But when you're going into it, just think about it differently, and all its component parts. So the way it's structured in funding, how are we going to achieve the interviews? How are we going to get the jobs? Otherwise, you will end up going, oh dear, that didn't work. So it's just thinking about it differently, but definitely embrace it.
Super, thanks, Alison. And Pascal, same question to your good self.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything different to say, really. It's yeah, I mean, they're not going to go away. They might, you know, they might be refined and evolved, as many things are in education. But you know, boot camps have been around for the last few years, and yeah, there's a shouting call for more colleges to be doing them, and you know, that will trigger people to you know, have it on their radar. And I think one of the things, you know, I would suggest is that with the curriculum planning model that exists maybe within the organizations already, it's you know, it's difficult to know what boot camps are going to be available when you're sat down. Like now, most colleges will be looking at their curriculum plans for the following academic year within this term, and knowing what's going to be available. So it's about how can you build in some agile point within that, and then also take into consideration about what you could potentially lobby for as well. You know, FE sector is on the ground of some of these challenges as well, and you know, the more that we can as a sector feedback to the Department for Education, or even if you live in the devolved authority, about what the challenges are, you know, that maybe supports all their data and all their labour market intelligence, they can work collaboratively and potentially do something that makes it easier for the sector to adapt to, and addresses the challenges that are, you know, we've mentioned around about the staffing and the skill set within some of these areas. So, you know, we need to be better at making sure that we've got that in there, because we can't teach these boot camps in these very high demand, low workforce areas if we don't have the people in the colleges to deliver them. So
yeah, I look, that's critical, and I you know, you both alluded to the fact that, you know, you're creatively solving that problem by growing your own. I really thank you both so much again for joining us for this session today, sharing your insights and experiences. Look, thanks to all of the guests. Also, thanks to Kira for supporting on chat fielding questions. In terms of running time, I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of the questions, but we will reply to you. And just please know that you can reach out to partners@codeinstitute.net at any time if you have any questions for ourselves, and certainly happy to link you up with either Pascal or Alison directly if you have any questions for the secrets to their success so far with skills boot camps. But thank you all once again, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
thank you very much. Bye.